Moolala is brought to you by the nonprofit credit counseling agency Credit Canada. Learning about investing is one thing, but actually trading investments is another, especially when it's your real money. So, what about a way to get familiar with trading in a risk-free way? Horizons ETFs has a partnership with National Bank, and it hosts a 6-week-long trading simulation, trading contest called The Biggest Winner. Mark Noble is Executive Vice President of EFT Strategy at Horizons ETFs, and he joins us now to talk about the contest and what participants will learn. Hello there.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm great. I love this idea of a simulation. I think it's cool that it focuses on ETFs because that's a way of investing that more and more Canadians can and should know more about. Let's start off with talking about the contest itself. How does it work?
Well, we've been doing this for 12th edition, so we've been doing this for quite some time. And as you highlighted, the idea behind it is to take every ETF in Canada that's listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange and in real-time simulation, so really only a 15-minute delay from real-time market data, you can go in and build a portfolio. You start with $100,000 of fantasy funds, and you build a portfolio, and you're seeking to generate the highest return over a 6-week period. Or in some cases, we actually have awards available on a weekly basis. In general, we give about $20,000 in prizes, with the grand prize winner getting about $10,000.
I remember when you could count the number of ETFs on the market on like your fingers and toes. There was I could probably have named them back in the day. How many are out there now for players to choose from?
It's fairly astounding. You're looking at over 1,000 options just in Canada alone. Yeah, it's incredible. And believe it or not, that's one of the reasons why this competition keeps getting bigger and bigger, is because the options and the types of ways to win is increasing. So when we first started the competition, we were probably at around 300 or so ETFs. And investors kind of had a pretty good sense of like the 30 or so that they could trade, most of them being leveraged. Trading is very different than investing, where they could generate high daily returns. Now, with the advent of things like cryptocurrency ETFs, covered call products that have leverage on them, even single stock ETFs, which are not in this competition, but they're in the Canadian marketplace. There's just so many different ways to generate a return that you start to get a much more diversified leadership profile, which personally I think is really exciting.
I'm glad you drew the distinction here between trading, like short-term tradings, and 6 weeks I'd call short-term, and investing for a year, 30 years, something like that. This competition is very clearly about the former.
Yes, there's no question. And it's really funny, even when I interview former winners and I ask them about what do you actually have in your portfolio, it's a lot of S&P 500 ETFs that they're holding for 20 years, maybe a couple stocks that they like. And that same investor, when we track how many trades they're doing, they'll do upwards of 100 to 200 trades in this competition doing natural gas, cryptocurrency. So it really is highlighting that the mindset of a trader is one focused on risk and really trying to seek out risk, where the mind of an investor is one seeking out returns and trying to avoid risk. So it's almost completely two polar opposite ways for which to allocate your money.
At the end of each competition, I'm sure you can discern the themes that made or broke the winner. And in past years, I'm making this up, they might have been things like cannabis or alternative energy or biotech or something. What's your hypothesis on what a winning theme could be this year? What is the territory that people are most excited about playing in?
Well, right now, very different from previous years. Most years it's commodities. And I think this year we'll probably see natural gas and oil and people going long and short. Remember, at any point in the day, one's up and one's down if you're using leveraged or inverse leverage ETFs. Those are always popular, and I think those will generate a fair amount of returns. But if we had to take one asset class that's really tearing it up right now, it's artificial intelligence related equities. So in particular, semiconductors. There are semiconductor ETFs in Canada. Our firm even has one. And that is a strategy where you don't even really need to trade it. It's just with NVIDIA and all the other semiconductor stocks hitting all-time highs, that's sort of been the brand new kind of shiny toy for investors. And it's really creating a little bit of a different trajectory and a little bit of a different leaderboard, because you've got some of these kind of commodity traders and you've got these people that are actually kind of just going long AI. And I'd say it's kind of a fight between the two right now to see which comes out on top at the end of the competition.
The contest is called The Biggest Winner, but you will also have a biggest a loser and hooray for them, because they're clearly hitting for the bleachers. In prior years, like, how off did they go? Because with short selling and those kinds of things, those losses can be off the charts.
Well, if there's a consistent biggest loser, it might be me.
Do you play along?
Oh, yeah, I do. I mean, it's fun, right? There's, this is the fun part of investing, and it's the part, and that's why we do this competition, is we want to create a comfort level, not necessarily with trading, but with investing and investing in terms of trying to see how these ETFs work. So why not try some things you wouldn't do with your own money? And certainly I do that. And it seems like I get it wrong quite a bit. And most of the time, yeah, it's usually storing commodities at the wrong time, not taking into account things like, well, it gets a little technical, but contango, which is like a premium roll that works against you in the futures market. Some of this stuff gets a little bit complex. And if you don't have the timing just right, you can get hurt. So even myself, who's been an investment professional for over 15 years, I still get absolutely hammered sometimes in this competition. So if there's a biggest loser, it's probably on my forehead.
Right. What are the strategies that people employ? You talked about going long, going short. Do some people just play it straight? Are there contenders who just play it straight?
Quite a few, actually, and we really love that. We have a lot of people that are brand new to ETF investing. So actually this year is our record number of registrants, and a lot of them have come from the self-directed investment community and have been driven sort of through the influencer and Reddit networks, which are more buy long and hold investors. And one stat that people don't realize is that in the self-directed community, there's actually more ETF ownership than mutual fund ownership. And a lot of these investors are new. We added 4 million new investors in Canada over the last 3 years and through the course of the pandemic. And so what we're seeing, what they're doing is they're actually using this as a way just to get comfortable with buying ETFs. So there are a lot of people actually who come into the competition and they just buy US equities, or they buy fixed income, or they buy maybe gold stocks or something that's a little bit risky for them. And it's a way for them to dip their toes in and get a sense of, how do I trade an ETF? And when I say trade, how do I take into account things like bid-ask spreads and pricing versus NAV? And so we have a large proportion of investors, probably like 1/3 or so, that are building a portfolio that they might build in real life, but they're using this as a way to sort of do their own simulation or their own trading for what they might want to do in their own portfolio.
What's your sense? I know you won't have precise data on this, but what's your sense in terms of the number of contestants who are fundamental investors and those who are technical investors? They're playing some wacky computer screen and it's like something out of a Hollywood movie.
Right now, if I look at the data, it's probably 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So 1/3 being people that are using technicals and trading patterns to trade volatility, and really what they're trying to do is find risky assets and go long or short. I'd say 1/3 are people who are buying things that interest them, but they've never wanted to try it out. Cryptocurrency is a big one, right? What's that look like if I put that in my portfolio? So those are people that would be more fundamental. And 1/3 are people that I literally think are throwing darts at the board and like shiny tickers and are kind of just riding with it. So
right, the Ouija
it takes
board
all kinds.
Is there. The research occurs on a Ouija board.
Throwing bones on the floor, all that kind of fun stuff.
So. One of the things as a part of the evolution of the ETF market here in Canada, back in the day, it was super boring and it was an index that everybody had heard of. Now there is an ETF for every single flavor of the month. And you see this all the time. How do you, as Horizons, balance keeping on top of trend and ensuring that you've got a product that delivers on trend, and also not getting caught in, we just launched this thing that turned out to be horrible a year ago, no one wants and no one's making any money on?
Well, that's a tough question. I mean, that's the product development process in a nutshell. What we're generally trying to do is we generally try to find good investment ideas that will also be ideas that investors will gravitate towards. The challenge, of course, with the capital markets is you just don't know what's going to work. So generally speaking, and if the ETF business, in terms of successful ETFs, and these are ETFs that generate 80, large amount of assets, that's less than 20% of the ETF offering. So the vast majority of ETFs in Canada are not, I would call, successful. And in fact, I would estimate that about 30% of the ETFs in Canada aren't even profitable. So a lot of ETF launches, if I'm being perfectly honest, are a little bit of a numbers game because, as you mentioned, the large asset classes are so well established. Like if there's, I think, probably over 20 S&P 500 ETFs in Canada alone. So why would you launch another S&P 500 ETF? So people will use slicing, dicing of flavors of that index, or they'll try different strategies. And sometimes it's just a case of seeing what's actually going to work. But there is a due diligence process. And that due diligence process is, of course, we have to back test and look and see whether these ETFs actually do deliver value. Because as an asset manager, despite what some people might think, we make our money from management fees, which means that as assets grow, we grow in terms of our revenue, and we want people to be successful. The challenge, of course, is that with the market changing and the dynamics of the market changing very frequently, you never know which your product is actually going to be successful from a returns perspective.
Just before we go, remind me, what's the prize? What's the prize of the biggest winner?
The biggest winner prize for the grand prize winner is $10,000. So that's real money that hopefully goes into a portfolio of their liking down the road. But there also are weekly $500 prizes as well. So we don't just reward someone for the long term. We also are trying to highlight people that have captured the right theme in the week, and that keeps a little bit more engagement happening.
Yeah. And that's a video game where you're learning something quite helpful. I could sign up for that. So. Maybe I'll send my 13-year-old in there. Give them some more screen time if they play. Mark, thanks for your time.
No, pleasure as always.
Mark Noble, Executive Vice President of ETF Strategy at Horizons ETFs. He was here to talk about his company's partnership with National Bank. It is a trading contest, trading simulation called The Biggest Winner.